Hello book people, PT here with a kind of a writing themed video today. I want to talk a little bit about the pros and cons of self-publishing. I've been self-publishing for about a year and a half now, and I've published 3 novels and 5 novellas, so I know a little bit about what I'm talking about. But the main reason is I think that the topic of self-publishing is a little like, if you think of like politics, sometimes in the world of politics, like the most extreme views, the most right-wing or left-wing views are often the loudest, sometimes literally screaming on your radio dial or whatever about their views. And I think self-publishing is the same way, where it is you have your people who are like, oh my god, if you publish with a traditional publisher, you're an idiot because you're giving up so much of your royalties. Just publish it yourself and keep all your royalties. And then on the other hand, you have the people who are like, oh my god, if you self-publish, you're an idiot because you will never be taken seriously. Your book, no one will read your book. It'll just sit on Amazon and collect dust, and you're giving up and not doing the hard work of finding a publisher. I think those are both really extreme views, and I totally disagree with both of them. And when I was trying to decide whether to self-publish my novel, well, a little backstory on that. So I wrote 2 novels that I have not published and never will probably, because it turns out now I look back at them and say, boy, those are not that good. But when I wrote this book, Regulation 19, kind of my 3rd novel that I've written, I really felt like, boy, there's something a little bit, this is a big step up from my previous books. There's something a little bit magic here, I think, and I really feel like people would like this and would respond to it. And I was also a little bit discouraged about my attempts to get published in the past with previous books. And I really felt like I just wanted to know, like, would people like this book or am I crazy? Because I feel like people would really like this book. And then I started thinking about self-publishing and researching it. And again, when I was researching it, I found mostly those really extreme views. So I'm a guy who's like not evangelical either way about self-publishing. So I thought I'd give you about a year and a half in some of my pros and cons of self-publishing, so that maybe if you're thinking about doing it, some things that kind of more a balanced voice of some things that you might want to take into consideration. So I'm not going to call this like self-publishing versus traditional publishing, because I don't have any experience traditional publishing, so I can't speak to that. But I'm going to talk about the pros and the cons of self-publishing that route. All right, so the first topic I'm going to tackle is the financial aspect. So I'd say one con to self-publishing over like traditional publishing, which again, as I said, I haven't done, so I'm taking some assumptions here. But I think with self-publishing, the con is that your floor is a little bit lower. If you're traditionally published, you're generally receiving in advance, sometimes maybe big, sometimes maybe small, but that's the minimum you're going to make, right? Is the advance after you pay your agent and your taxes and all that. That's the minimum that you're going to make. With self-publishing, the minimum you're going to make is a negative number. I spend usually for my full-length novels around maybe $1,500 per novel. So my floor, if I don't sell any copies, is negative $1,500 versus if I was traditionally published and got an advance, that advance would be my floor. Similarly, I think the ceiling's probably a little bit higher if you traditionally publish. There's I'm not going to be James Patterson, although I think that gap is lessening a little bit. I do know, I know of a lot of self-published authors making a lot of money, and I know personally, just through the internet, but I know personally self-published authors, at least one that's making in the mid 6-figure range. So it is possible to make a fair amount of money, but probably not James Patterson level money. That's kind of a long shot if you're traditionally published too. There's only one James Patterson raking it in. But anyway, that's the con. The pro of it is if you're confident that you're going to sell some copies and make some money, you're going to keep a higher percentage of the royalties that come in. When self-publishing, when you're selling ebooks, you make 70% of what you sell, as long as you price it between $2.99 and $9.99. You get to keep 70% of that. Amazon or the other sellers get the rest. So that's kind of the pros, that you get to keep more of it. So basically it's math. It's right, like you could figure out like how many copies do I think I can sell. And if you haven't done this before, obviously you're guessing a little bit, but now that I've done it a few times, I kind of know how many copies I can kind of sell, and I can say, all right, well, here is how much I'm going to make. And it's not an exact number, of course, because each book is different, but anyway, that's the pro. So really, it's kind of looking at it like that. Like you're gonna make more per copy self-published. You're gonna probably sell more copies traditionally published. So you got to kind of do some weighing and balancing there. All right, number two I'm going to call intangibles. So the con of this is that you're going to get a little less respect as a self-published author. When I was thinking about self-publishing, I got a lot of well-meaning comments from friends and family who had read Regulation 19 and were like, dude, this book is really good and maybe you should try to get a publisher for this, a real publisher. They kind of like were not too psyched for me when they heard I was going to self-publish it, so you got to like expect a little bit of that. Of course, they were probably a little bit behind the times and didn't know how many copies I was going to be able to move and all that stuff. But there's that. There's also people who just won't read self-published books, which is fine. You know, there's certain books I won't read. I probably won't read too many, Regency romance books. But, you know, there's some people who are just draw that line. It's like, yeah, no, I don't read self-published books. You know, you'll see just little things here and there. I think the perception has changed a lot. It used to be that, like, self-publishing was like, oh, death to your career. You'll never be a real writer or whatever if you self-publish. And there's still some of that. Like, I saw an article on Book Riot one time that kind of like made me roll my eyes a little bit. That was like, the title of the article I think was something like, if publishers stopped existing, I would never read another book. And that was the whole basic idea, that like they didn't want to read a self-published book so bad that if like publishers just magically went away for some reason, they would never read another book again, which I was like, kind of rolled my eyes. But nothing against Book Riot. I actually really love Book Riot, but just that one article I thought was kind of silly. So there you go, you're going to get less respect from some people. The pro is that when you're successful as a self-published author, it's a good feeling. Like that feeling I had about Regulation 19, that I think people would like this book. Am I crazy? I'd always wondered my whole life, like I've never been published. I feel like I'm a good writer. I think I'm a good writer. I think people would really like my stories. They're different than anything else out there. I was able to prove that through self-publishing. You know, I've got pretty good reviews on my books, and people tend to, not everyone's going to like them, just like any other book, but it's a really good feeling to know that this story and this like suspicion that I've had my whole life, that man, I think I've got something to say and I think people would enjoy it. That kind of ego thing of like, hey, you know what, I wasn't crazy, I was actually right about that. It actually means a lot to me, and it's very did a lot for my self-confidence in writing and just in general to know that boy, I do have a unique story to tell that people actually like. The final thing is the production end of it. So the con for self-publishing is that you and your team that you hire are going to be in charge of everything, absolutely everything. I hire, I guess, three other people that I pay other than myself to work on my book. So I've got my editor, I've got my proofreader, and I've got my cover artist. Those are the paid people who are involved in the process. And then I also have some, just lots of people who like my work who are willing to read it in advance and give me feedback on it and things like that as well. So, overall there's probably like 10 people involved in seeing it and having input before it's out there, but 3 besides myself who are paid. But the thing is, we're in charge of everything, and I'm kind of like the boss of everything. I'm kind of the CEO of my little company here. And so if I don't do something, it doesn't get done. And an example of that is the last few months I've been really working hard on these novellas, as I talked about in my last video, and I haven't been focusing on marketing at all. So guess what? There's been no marketing done on my books. No one else is doing that. And my sales will go down a little bit because of that. So yeah, that's the thing. So one thing to know about self-publishing though is that you don't have to do it all yourself. You can hire a team, and you should hire a team probably of people to help you take care of different things to go with it. But it is, at the end of the day, all up to you. The pro of that is that you have total control. Like anything I want to do, it's up to me. If I want to make my first book in my series free for a little while to drive sales, I can do that. If I want to offer it free in exchange for signing up for my mailing list, I can do that. Basically any marketing idea that I have that I want to do, I can do. I look at it a little bit like, this is kind of in summary of all these, it's a little bit like trying to decide whether to start like a small mom and pop shop kind of business, or going and working with a major corporation. I work in my day job with a very large corporation, and I love it because I am able to focus solely on the thing that I'm really good at. And there's thousands and thousands of people who work for my corporation, and each of them are in charge of a little piece of our overall business, and I'm able to focus on this one thing that I really love. So that's kind of similar to traditional publishing. Not that you get to focus only on writing in traditional publishing, because of course they want you to focus on marketing and things like that too, but it's a little closer to that. Whereas I have a friend who is a realtor, and he loves being self-employed and being a realtor who kind of is his own small business, because he's totally able to control everything. He's able to, if he wants to bring in more income, he can work harder in a certain aspect, and there's a direct correlation. Whereas in my job, I can work harder, and maybe I'll get a raise, or maybe in some small way I'll boost the company overall, but I'm not seeing as direct a one-to-one ratio with my income. Again, that's not a perfect analogy, because if you're a traditionally published author, you can work hard on marketing and you probably will see a direct correlation in your royalties on that. But I think it's a useful analogy nonetheless, and it's even really more than an analogy, because that's literally what you're doing. If you're a self-published author, you're starting a small little business, and if you're a traditionally published author, you're working with a large corporation. Well, at the same time, it's got some aspects of having your own business too. So that's where I'm at, and the reason that I was thinking about this is that I'm starting a new novel for NaNoWriMo. I started a new novel, and it's the first in a new series. So for the first time since I've been self-publishing, my first 3 books were all in a trilogy, and then my novellas, I didn't think anyone was going to want to publish fantasy novellas, although Tor has dipped into that a little bit, so maybe I should have tried to get in with them, I don't know. So basically this new novel is my first time since I've self-published to think about, what do I want to do with this next book? Do I want to self-publish, or do I want to maybe go for a traditional publisher? I think I'm going to self-publish it, but yeah, you never know. I do admire, and my long-term goal in my career is to be kind of a hybrid author with some self-published books and some traditionally published books. I look at guys like Chuck Wendig, who's a big writing and publishing hero of mine, in that he does it so many different ways. He has traditionally published books. He writes for different franchises. Like he wrote a Star Wars book recently. Was on the bestseller list and a huge seller. He publishes some books through Amazon's imprint, which is more traditionally published, but also they're not gonna. Most brick and mortar stores don't carry Amazon imprints because that's their competitor. So, and then he has some self-published books. So he's like spreads it out all over the place. And that's the kind of career that I would like to have. So that's what I want to build. Finally, I didn't say it before, but one thing that you probably want to consider in deciding whether to self-publish is, if it's your big dream to be able to walk into Barnes & Noble and see your book on the shelf, then probably don't self-publish, because that's not going to happen. But unless something really weird happens. And that's perfectly valid. I don't think there's a right or wrong answer. I hope this has been a very rambly video, but I hope I've given you a little bit of insight into what I find of the pros and cons of self-publishing, and hopefully like an unbiased view. So I don't know, leave your comments below, let me know what you think. That's going to do it for me. Thanks so much for watching.